It's the Blue Vote Cafe, a little bit of wonkish, a whole lot of fun. I'm David Schellenberg along with Rachel Oyster. We're the co-chairs for Democrats Abroad in Canada's capital of Ottawa. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, David. How are you doing today?
Ottawa has this big music festival called Blues Fest.
It does indeed.
And, you know, acts at Blues Fest included Sum 41 and Shania Twain. So as all of Ottawa goes, yes, it's called Blues Fest because it's sort of a legacy name, and please don't ask or have the discussion yet again on why exactly some of these bands are performing at it. But anyways,
is there any blues?
There was. Oh my goodness, yeah, some beautiful blues. There, a local guy, J.W. Jones, who's a friend of mine, just beautiful, classic, old-fashioned blues performer. But all to say, after all that, I've got sort of festival throat. You know, you spend a lot of time. That happens after, political rallies and protests as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Have you laid in a supply of lozenges?
Yes, Ricolas are everywhere.
Yeah.
How have you been up to?
Chores mostly, yeah. And welcoming some new neighbors. We have new neighbors next door, so that's been kind of fun after the people who have lived there the entire time we've been in our house moved away. Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's always awkward.
Domestic things, I guess.
Domestic things. Who's with us today, Rachel?
Today, we have two leaders from Indivisible Abroad, which has been springing up in chapters around the world. Louise Parker and Alyssa Elliott, welcome to you both, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Is that Alyssa
thank you
speaking?
so much.
There we go. I guess we should mention Louise has been fighting laryngitis, so...
Yeah. What festival were you at, Louise?
Sadly, I don't have a wonderful excuse like that.
Oh, no. Well, hopefully you're out protesting or something.
Let's start with our usual question. Why don't you each tell us where you are in the world and what brought you there?
Sure, I'll start. So this is Alyssa. I am based in the UK, and I came here originally for drama school, and I've been here now about 7 years.
Well, and then the other part of that is where do you vote from? Where do you vote?
I vote from Oregon.
Okay. And you're staying there just because you love drama school so much?
I love the UK. I was thinking about moving back to the States last fall, and then I was there on election day, and I changed my mind.
Well, that's an answer we haven't had to that question yet. Louise, what part of the world are you in, and where do you vote, and what keeps you in your part of the world?
So I split my time between Berlin, Germany, and Bologna, Italy. And I've lived all over the UK, lots of places in the US, but I vote in Massachusetts because that's the last place I was when I was resident in the US.
Right.
Exactly, right. So splitting between two countries, what brings you back and forth, and how much time do you spend in each?
That's a great question. It's variable, and it's about to change, and it's sort of complicated. I was a professor when I was back in the US, and I retired and somewhat early, and then turned to doing pretty much almost full-time political activism. My husband's an astronomer, and he is the a director general of an observatory that's an international observatory. It's based in the EU. And there we travel a lot because of that work. But it has sort of two split headquarters, and one is in Berlin and one is in Bologna.
How cool.
Wow.
That's wonderful. Do you have to ask yourself when you wake up in the morning where you are?
Sometimes.
I can imagine. Well, that's amazing. So, Indivisible Abroad, let's talk about it. We as you both know, we had Ezra Levin, one of the co-founders of Indivisible, on the pod already, but Indivisible Abroad is a whole new movement. So, yeah, can you tell us what it is and how it began?
Yeah, so I started Indivisible London in March, just kind of being lost and not knowing other Americans in London. And I knew that the Indivisible name would gather them to me, and it has worked phenomenally well. And it also gathered a lot of other international people, because it was a little bit of a challenge to get registered on the website. It was only built for US zip codes. So as soon as Indivisible London popped up on the map, I had people from all over Europe reaching out to me saying, "Oh, how did you do this? How can I join? How can I get connected with you?" And I believe that's how I got connected with Louise. And from there, it grew. We had very, very quickly people in, I think, over a dozen countries, all in a big group chat. And then Louise and a woman named Mary were really instrumental in forming that into a more official group, which is now kind of the collective Indivisible Abroad.
Sounds oddly familiar to Democrats abroad.
Yeah, so Mary and I sort of connected on the internet, sort of screaming out into the void. We were both people living abroad. Mary has been in the UK for probably longer than she was in the US, actually. But we both didn't really know, much like Alyssa, we really didn't know a lot of Americans here. We knew all kinds of other people. So we connected and talked, and then Mary found out about Indivisible London, and then we met all these other people from Paris and, all over the place, Italy and so forth. And we had this sense, and we talked to people saying, are you interested in this becoming a group? And the idea was that there were these local groups everywhere, but that we could share information about how to organize, problems we were having. What is the purpose of being an American activist in Europe or Canada or anywhere else, right? And could we share things? Could we share resources? It started with Alyssa helping people to just register with Indivisible, which shouldn't have been such a struggle, but she figured out how to break that code. And but we also want to talk about strategies and what could we do. And that's where we are today, trying to be a network of people to come together, share our resources, help each other with talking about ideas for the events that people have in their own country, but also how we could work together collectively in a virtual way to educate each other, to come up with an idea about what is our purpose and what can we serve for the resistance, and what can we use about our position being in different countries where free speech is actually easier for us here, for example.
Right. And what is the purpose? You've started to answer it, but what is the purpose of being an American activist outside the country?
I think that's a big question. It's a great question.
I know.
And it's one that we are continually discovering. And as we are finding the answer to that, it's clear that we have really unique challenges as US citizens abroad, but it also means that we have really unique opportunities. So there are things that everyone can do. We can still call our reps back in the States. We can still sign petitions and write op-eds for our hometown papers and things like that. But we can also do things that people in the States cannot. As Louise said, free speech is somewhat easier for us here. And that was actually a big part of my decision to stay in the UK instead of going back to the States. I knew that I would be able to be more of a voice from here. And another thing that we're finding is the ability to form coalitions with international groups. A lot of the work that we're doing here in London is joining with other groups who are not US citizens, with things like the Ukraine Solidarity Campaign and the Stop Trump Coalition, where we have very, very similar goals. And we can be building these kind of grassroots diplomatic relationships.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think there are sort of two broad principles. There has always been the case when there have been authoritarian takeovers and other issues and struggles in countries, that there has always been a role for people who are expats or immigrants even from those countries living abroad. They have always played a role in helping those resistance movements. That's classically has happened because of we may have more ability to write and to speak and so forth. And the other thing is, and Alyssa and I've talked about this, and I've talked about this with many other people in the group, what's happening in the US is not an isolated problem at all. We are seeing the rise of ultra-right, right-wing, authoritarian, fascist, whatever you want to call it, all over the place. So there is a rise in Germany of right-wing party. It's not in control, but it is on the rise. We see this in Italy, Hungary, very much so.
Yeah.
There have been interesting things that have happened in Korea. I could go on, and I'm sure you're all aware of this. So there is overall a global problem that we're in together. And it's what Trump is doing is not unique. It's happening very rapidly, and it's very frightening to us because that is our home country.
Right.
But this is happening all over the world. So we have things in common with the people in our own country, in the countries we're living in now.
Right. So has that come up for discussion within the core coordinating committee of? I hadn't thought about that having Indivisible Abroad around the world is helpful, not just for what's going on in the States, but around the world. So do you see Indivisible Abroad starting to look outward at the rest of the world at the same time that we're fighting this immediate fight in the U.S.?
Definitely. And I think it's something that the Indivisible ethos is that each group knows what's best for its group and its community. And so Indivisible Abroad isn't dictating what each group needs to do. But I think a lot of them are naturally finding that here in the UK, we see a really, really clear parallel, as Louise was saying, with the global rise of the far right, here with Farage and the Reform Party, which is using the exact same playbook as Trump and MAGA have. Right. And so we also have this experience to come and say, hey, UK, look at what is happening. You can't think, oh, I'm glad this will never happen here, because it is currently happening here. We're just a few years behind the States.
Right.
I mean, I think that's exactly the parallel with reform is, I think, a very good one, or a very bad one. But anyway, the apt one maybe is the best way to say it. Yeah. And there are other examples. I mean, Les is right. Each group in their own country is going to have to figure out what to do, and what they feel is appropriate for them to do, what they feel comfortable doing. I personally have gone to, not to say with my Indivisible hat on, but I've gone to rallies in Germany, in Berlin, that were anti-fascist rallies. So I participated in what's happening here. But each group is going to need to decide what they're comfortable with. And also people have different visa statuses and safety and what they can do. So it's complicated.
Right.
And Alyssa, are you finding with the protests, is it Americans who are sort of coming out of hiding to be a part of it? Or is it even local people in various countries around the world that feel the need to say something about the U.S. politics, even when they're not citizens?
It's a really big mix. Again, I'm sorry, I can mostly only speak for the UK, despite being on the coordinating committee. But
right.
for the events that we've had, I'd say it's probably 60 to 70% US citizens, and that even might be high. And then we have a lot of UK citizens, a lot of immigrants from other places to the UK, including the US, and a lot of Canadians as well. We've made a lot of outreach to our fellow Commonwealth citizens there, or residents rather. And at No Kings, which we had No Tyrants, as I believe you did.
We did.
We also had a Latin American group join onto our protest. They heard that we were doing it, and they decided to come join with their group as well. So it truly is an international effort because, yeah, like Louise said, this issue, it did not rise in isolation in the States, and its effects will be felt worldwide, along with the rise of the far right everywhere. So it is truly a time for solidarity, and a lot of people here are seeing that and acting on it.
Right. And I think that was kind of what we saw, Rachel, here in Ottawa with the Indivisible protest. Like, it was about 60. What do you think the percentage was of just straight Canadians who came out and joined?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, it probably is about what Alyssa was saying. There were a lot of Canadians there. Yeah, it really struck a chord. And
I know this has happened in other countries as well. In Italy, they have had Italians who were interested for a variety of reasons, like, various like Fulbright scholars and things like that. But also tourists who happen by and find out or read about it. And so
Yes.
tourists have showed up. I've gone to protest in different countries because I move around a lot, so I've visited different ones. I was in one in Paris, and I actually myself brought some tourists to people I knew happened to be visiting Paris at the time. So, one of the things that was really striking to me, this came from the protest in Florence, is that there was a Facebook post from a bunch of tourists who happened upon this, or maybe found it from the web from Mobilize. I'm not sure how they got there, and they posted about participating in this event. What was most striking about that were the comments that came on Facebook of people from America who were unbelievably touched that there were protests abroad.
Yes.
And it was so meaningful to people. And it was, that was really wonderful to hear, that it made such a difference to people back in the States.
Absolutely. The pictures from around the world were incredibly powerful.
And I'm sure both of you have heard also Ezra from Indivisible say that a lot of what we're doing with protest is creating the conditions for courage. And I think that's exactly it. When people who are in the States see that they have international support behind them, that helps create so much more courage for them to get out and stand up.
Absolutely.
Hopefully
I was
they're
going to
seeing
ask.
it. Yeah. Well, as long as
Yes,
they're seeing it.
Definitely. Yeah, well, that's right. Are they? Well, for that, I think social media is probably it. But I was going to ask about the relationship with Indivisible. It seems to have taken them a bit by surprise that people around the world were forming indivisible groups. Although, of course, that was, they designed something that could be portable to anywhere. But what has your impression been of their reaction?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I think you were exactly right. It took them kind of by surprise. And as we were trying to kind of tap in and say, hey, we exist, just so you know, I think for a while they thought it was but that it was citizens of these other countries organizing in
Yes, they
solidarity.
didn't realize Americans were involved. That seemed very clear. Yeah.
Which it is funny. American immigrants, we just don't think of them. And there are 9 million, I think,
Yes.
U.S. citizens around the world. So we are a formidable force. And we have a lot of power, and they tend to be people who are very engaged and want to be supporting democracy. So
Absolutely.
I think we're a bit more on their radar now, especially, and thanks to your podcast episode with Ezra and Debbie as well.
Yeah.
And so we're getting to know how we work within the system, and again, these challenges and opportunities that are different for us, which is so nice to have this Indivisible Abroad container, because we are rightly not their highest priority. They have thousands of groups in the States to be managing.
Yes.
And so we are doing everything we can to build for ourselves, since we are in such different situations than they've encountered before either.
Absolutely.
It's also, it behooves us to come up with how we can help and show them what use we can be to them. I mean, also we can talk with them and get their ideas, and I hope that we can have that dialogue. But I think we need to do that work somewhat and show the value of this, which I think is potentially very great. They have just created something called 1 Million Rising, which I'm sure you're all aware of, and they're basically trying to build a mass movement that's beyond not just these protests that are happening, not that those aren't wonderful,
Right.
but something that will build a sustained resistance that will extend to, we hope to see, disruption of the system. So things like strikes and refusal to comply of people working in the government, and on and on and on. So they're working to do that. And so we're participating in these trainings, and then we're going to think about, okay, obviously having a strike in the UK or in Italy or Germany is it's not something we could organize.
That's not going to worry Donald Trump.
It's not. No, it's just going to be disruptive to the countries we're in, and that's not the issue.
Right.
What kinds of things can we do to help participate in this really broad mass movement that goes beyond just demonstrations?
Right. And the 1 Million Rising initiative, they've just launched it, right, with some
Yes.
webinars.
Yes, there will be three. The first is out, and there's a video people can watch if you can't listen to it, and there'll be two more that are coming.
Wonderful.
And they're also encouraging everyone, once you've attended that first training, to gather a group yourself and pass that training on to them. So building these little community groups who are learning with each other, since that is really the way that we will win this.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and there's materials to help with all of this, and the videos can be shared. And there's more than the videos. There's kits to help people and so forth. So it's quite an impressive effort, and I'm really curious to see where it goes.
Right. And we now have this new network internationally. I was going to ask this, it's a bit of a change of subject, but it's a baby movement. You started the Indivisible London in March, Alyssa, so it's 4 months old. Although it should be said that there was a Democrats Abroad member who started an Indivisible chapter in 2017, but hadn't figured out the hack you did to get registered on the website. She just used the checklist and off.
Yeah, there are a
went.
few of those around, and I think we'll keep discovering more.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
We scour the internet looking for things. Mary, who's not with us, is one of the other people who's been central in this. Has done a fantastic job of that. I've helped her a bit, but I want to give her credit.
Yes.
And tracking people down, and we sort of find people and say, "Hey, could you come on in? We love your energy. We can use your help."
That's happening a little in miniature in Canada because within the Indivisible Abroad bucket is Indivisible Canada. And there's people here. There's somebody in Kingston doing this. There's somebody in Vancouver.
Yep.
Can we figure out who they are? People go on the hunt to try to connect.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what when you look at Indivisible, is this an organization that exists to do protests primarily, or is that just a small part of a bigger thing? Alyssa, what do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's a small part of a bigger thing. And it's part of what we're discussing here in the UK as well. We've done 2 of the large days of action. We did Hands Off and No Tyrants, and we've done smaller events for May Day and Good Trouble Lives On. But we're realizing that protest may not be the most effective form of activism in London for now. And we might be burning people out if we're following the same schedule as they are in the States, which I think is a great strategy for the States. And I don't want to pull away from that at all. As well as adding what Louise has said with this 1 Million Rising, it is also not just protest there. It is building this continuing machine so that as one person needs to drop out and rest, it will continue without them. It is not just about protest, but we are focusing on these community building things within the UK with our other groups and trying to see what our best strategy is. At our Good Trouble Lives On organizing meeting, we heard from a human rights lawyer who spoke very eloquently about the fact that we can't do everything. And as you said, this is a baby movement, whether in London or the Indivisible Abroad groups as a whole, but we can't do everything. And if we try to, we will just water it down and not achieve anything. So instead, it's about choosing what we will do and recognizing what that means we will not be doing. Even though they are just as valid and needed, we will hope that other people and groups will step up to fill those spaces. And despite saying all of this about that protest isn't our biggest thing, the next big thing we are working on here is supporting the Stop Trump Coalition for a big protest when Donald Trump comes here for the state visit with the king in September.
That's right. He's coming.
Yeah.
Yes. He's very proud. He's going to get a state dinner.
Yes, but he can't address Parliament. They scheduled it cleverly for that. So it is a protest, but we're holding back on the other days of action so we can build this into another event that's hundreds of thousands of people like it was when they did it in 2018.
Right. And that's similar to the conversations that are going on in Ottawa. We can't do a big event every month. It's just not going to happen. And then it just starts to look ineffective and weak if they
Right.
shrink every time.
Yeah.
So have you talked in Indivisible London about what you do want to focus on?
Yeah, we are at the moment. It is the coalitions and seeing how we work with these other groups. We're still figuring out exactly what it means. I think a lot of it will be mutual aid and supporting people who end up in the UK as they need to leave the States for various reasons, and building this network of pro-democracy, anti-fascist groups throughout the UK and Europe. We're doing a lot of work with groups that were anti-Brexit and now are actively trying to get the UK to rejoin the EU as a source of strength here as well.
Right. Interesting. And that is the perfect segue because this is the Democrats Abroad podcast. So
How about us?
Yeah. What are your thoughts about how you see Indivisible Abroad and Indivisible Abroad individual chapters working together with DA?
Yeah, great question. I want to, Louise, do you want to go on that one? I know I've been talking a lot, but I'm happy to take it if your throat is tired.
I wanted to just step back for a minute because you asked about Indivisible and whether protests were its main thing.
Sure.
And I think it's important to put Indivisible into a historical context, if we can include going back to 2016 historical. The left was, I would say, I've been an activist a lot of my life. The left was sort of moribund at that time. And when Trump came into power, a bunch of things arose. And what came out of that was a revigorated Democratic Socialists of America, which was a tiny little socialist group that got tons of youth and people, and campaigns came out of that. AOC, for example.
Right.
There was Justice Democrats. There was a brand new Congress. Only some of that has survived. There was Our Revolution. So there were many groups, and one of them was Indivisible. And what they started with was a guide about, they were a bunch of people who had worked for Congress who said, people are not effectively engaging with their reps, so we're going to tell you how to do it to be effective. And that's what they started with. So it was all kinds of groups doing all kinds of things, and everybody adopted the Indivisible Guide. I was actually not centrally involved in Indivisible. I was in other groups, and we adopted that for the lobbying portion of our work. So this all goes back to that. But what we've seen now in the second administration of Trump, so what's happened now in 2025, is I look to other groups that existed, but Indivisible really stood up in a way that other groups haven't in taking leadership. There's 5051, and I can't talk as much about them because I don't know as much about them, but who did these sort of wildcat protests and so forth, and great energy. But Indivisible sort of took this structure that they had, and they have many more groups than they had. They always had these local groups, but it really blossomed, and they really took a thought and a very thoughtful approach to how might we build a mass movement, how might we collaborate with other groups, and they've really stepped up in trying to have an intelligent resistance. And I think they really are at this point, I think, sort of the leaderships of that. And part of what that is, and something that they talk about in the training for the Million Rising, is they don't use this term, but a term that's used historically is a popular front. And they say we need to build a movement in which we work with people who all stand against fascism and authoritarianism, but may not agree on many other things. Some may be more left, some may be middle of the road, maybe all different kinds of things. But unless we build this broad, diverse movement, we will not be able to beat them. Everyone knows this 3.5% that you need to mobilize.
Yes.
Well, if you can do 3.5%, you're going to have all different kinds of people. So it's about mobilizing and building these networks to work together. And that means different groups. So that's one of the reasons we're very interested in working with Democrats Abroad, because it's another group in which, whether we agree on everything doesn't matter, but we agree that we don't want an authoritarian regime.
Right. Well put. Yeah.
Well, and that
Good
is tough
perspective.
tough on the left, because I think a lot of times people do compared to the right, where the right seems to be able to overlook something you don't like, the left, we kind of nitpick in every little thing. And is that accurate?
Unfortunately, I'd say that it is. I've been there a lot of my life, and sectarianism is it's been a serious problem. And so, I could talk endlessly about that, but I don't think it's helpful.
Well, I guess the question is,
we need to move.
Yeah, what do you say to somebody when they says like, we're
Yes,
not perfect? Like, how do you, Alyssa, I guess it's your turn. How do you tell people that, there's some sticky little bits, but we still got to come together and do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge for a lot of people, myself included sometimes. And it really is just remember, I mean, this is a line from the Hunger Games, but remember who the real enemy is.
Yeah.
That's okay, Alyssa. We're in the Hunger Games.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's once we defeat the fascists, then we can argue over policy. But we have to maintain a democracy before we can get there. So we have to find the things we agree on, which is Trump is bad for the United States of America and the world, and get him out and get MAGA out. And
get rid of Citizens United. Yeah.
Yes, Citizens United.
Absolutely, 100%. I want to get back to fighting for universal health care and, free college tuition. I mean, that's what I want to fight about.
And affordable child care.
But we can't
and no
do
guns
that.
in the street. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't do that now because we have to defeat the fascists.
Yes, exactly.
Something that we're talking a lot about here and with our partners is that it is not enough to just say we need to return to the status quo, because the status quo is what got us here. And so we need to be coming up with a vision for the future that is hopeful and inspiring, and that will unite us all towards a common goal. And that won't necessarily be policy things, but it will be a true democracy that works for all of us, and a country that takes care of its people, and then the other things that we get into discussions about.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and I guess the follow-up to that is, I mean, it's fairly easy to galvanize around evil Trump, but are we actually for anything other than just not being Trump?
I think that's a great question. And I think part of the problem that got us here, look, I'm going to blame the GOP as much as I possibly can. They're evil,
Go
right?
for it. Yep.
But that said, we have to own the fact that we were not necessarily offering a positive vision that gave people what they need. And there are great examples. I'm sure maybe you've heard of Mandami, who was a candidate for mayor in New York City.
Yep.
And he's someone who went and walked the streets I'm from New York originally. He went and walked the streets in Washington Heights. There's a large Dominican population there, even who are not very wealthy. It's a gentrifying neighborhood like everything in New York, but a lot of Dominicans are still there. And many of them voted for Donald Trump. And he talked to people about policies, positive things that would help people in New York City. And he said, what do you think of all this? And they said they love it. They would support him. So I think talking to people, getting out there and finding out what people need, what is their pain, what are things we can do to alleviate that pain, I think is a very positive thing to do and a very important thing to do. And I think the center has sort of let that down, and the right moved in. Now, they said all kinds of things. We're going to clear the swamp. We're going to get rid of the Washington insiders. That's not what they did. They lied, but they acted as if they were offering something.
Yeah, there was a vision.
Right.
It was
It's
a vision.
interesting. You mentioned AOC a little while ago, and I saw a tweet from her right after Trump's reelection in which she said, "Those of you who voted for Trump and me, can you please tell me why?" I didn't see any of the responses, but just the fact that question was out there was really striking to me.
There's great video on that. So hunt it down.
Okay.
She really went and much like I said, Mandami went up to Washington Heights. She went around in Queens and the Bronx, I guess, in her district, and talked to people and said, "Tell me." And yeah, she really said she didn't criticize, she didn't anything, she just listened.
Yeah, that is key.
And that is another point. Sorry, there's a helicopter going ahead if you can hear that.
Oh, no, it's not. I don't hear it.
Right.
I'm a little worried now, but no.
Hope it's not Trump
That's
coming
London.
in early.
No. But that we will also have ex-MAGA folks that we need to be bringing into our tent.
Absolutely.
And that is going to be hard.
Yeah, it is.
And we can't get dragged into the I told you so's or you deserved this. We need to be welcoming these folks and saying, I'm sorry that you didn't get what you voted for. I'm sorry that they lied. Here is what we are doing to bring the cost of living down. Here is what we are doing to make the United States a better place for you to raise a family. Here is how we're going to do the things that you were promised. Because sure, some people voted for Trump because they're racist and sexist and all sorts of other things. But I hope and believe that the majority did not, that they were just voting for what they thought would make it a better place for them to live.
Right.
And so we need to offer them that. And I know I challenge the DNC on this a lot, that they're always talking about, oh, we can't reach the young people. We can't reach the young people. How do we get them engaged? And like Louise just said, they were incredibly engaged for Zoran Mamdani. They're engaged with Kat Abu Ghazaleh. And so they are telling us what they want. And Gen Alpha is going to start voting in 2028. So we need to be listening and working with them now to build a platform that includes them.
Yep. So do you see encouraging people to vote as being part of the work of Indivisible Abroad?
I think it is definitely a part, but I also think that Democrats Abroad does such a great job of that our role there will be sending people to Democrats Abroad. Kind of along
Love that answer.
Yes. Good. We don't need any duplications. Yeah.
Right. With that strategy arm, you guys have the lock on that. You are so good at it. And so we don't need to duplicate those efforts. We can pick up where there are spaces and other voids.
Right. So you send us people to us.
We've talked about that, quite a bit. And that part of the politics, I mean, it's already being done, so we don't need to do that. What we can maybe be effective in doing is talking about people who are disengaged in the whole system for a variety of reasons.
Right.
And talk with them about how engaging in whatever way, and the kinds of things that Alyssa was talking about, and getting them to engage and getting them to feel empowered to make a difference. And voting is one of those things, but it's only one of those things.
Right. But the reciprocal part of the relationship is that you can offer to Democrats Abroad members a place where they can express their activism in ways they can't as Democrats Abroad. So
Absolutely.
There's potential for great synergy there.
Yeah. And that's what sorry, go ahead.
That's just going to say that, that's what we've seen. The people, there are a bunch of people from Democrats Abroad. For example, you, Rachel, we've seen come into this. And that's exactly what they've said, is that this was a place to do some of the things that they couldn't do within the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Yeah. What were you going to say, Alyssa, or was it very much what Louise just said?
Very similar, yes. And that one of the advantages of Indivisible is that we are not associated with a party. So we can push the parties as we need to. So when a Republican votes the way we want them to, we celebrate that. And when the Democrats aren't being bold enough, we push them to be bolder. And I think it was probably, a very much a national and international group effort, but things like Cory Booker's filibuster speech. Yes. This is happening because everyone is coming together and saying, we need more from you. We are expecting and demanding more.
Yeah, good point.
That is a great way to put it. Yeah, because within Democrats Abroad, we can't necessarily criticize Democrats, even though it's really tempting sometimes. But but Louise, back to you. How do you get politicians in the United States to notice all of us living outside of the United States?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. it's something I've engaged with when I was in the States, because I used to visit people, and I also had very close relationship with left politicians who were sort of activists who ran and who got in and sort of kind of wore two hats, which is an awkward thing. So I know some of these people personally. I'm a little far away, so talking with them in the way that I used to, I can't do as easily.
Right. But you still have a vote.
But I still have a vote. I mean, my vote they don't see, but we can make phone calls. We can write. We can some of the things Alyssa mentioned. You can write out ads. We can call them. We can talk. We can talk to them. My reps, because I'm voting in Massachusetts, particularly my senators, are within the frame of what you can do now. They're voting against a lot of this garbage. But I call them and say other things. I thank them for that, but then I call them and say other things and ask them to be more activist and think outside the box and not think about the gentlemen and women's agreements in the halls of Congress and think about getting out in the streets and being more activist and becoming part of a resistance. So I've tried to encourage thinking in a different way.
So if people want to get involved, if they want to start their own groups internationally, how do we share the word on that?
They can email us, and our email is indivisibleabroad@protonmail.com. And then people can also reach out to what Alyssa can say, but we can arrange to talk to people. We can get them involved in the Indivisible Abroad larger group. If there's a group in their area, we can point them to it. If they want to start a group, we can give them information on that. So whatever they would like to do, but we can certainly start conversations.
And one thing that we haven't mentioned today that is unique and really great about Indivisible Abroad is that it is useful for people who might be the only American in their community if they're living not in a large city like London. So if they're not close to a group, they can get involved in Indivisible Abroad because everything that we have done so far as that network is happening online.
Right.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
And we have a number of members where they live in rural areas or things like that. People live in a big city like Paris. We got people to send you to, or London. There's very active groups. But they absolutely can, and there's things they can do.
Wonderful. Anything we haven't touched on that you guys want to make sure we say?
Don't think so. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us and also for all the work that you're putting into this.
You too.
It's a huge amount of work and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you for inviting us. It's a pleasure to talk with you and to connect with other people in these very dark times and this struggle. Hopefully we'll come out of this better.
Yes.
There's one thing I heard on the first Million Rising that I think is a really positive thing, was for me, and made my day, which was they talked about where they have overturned these authoritarian regimes, where they've stopped them. And in those cases where they did it, on the other side, democracy didn't return to what it was, it became stronger.
That is wonderful. What a great note to end on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
If you live outside the U.S., please register with your voting state at votefromabroad.org every year. Do it now. To find all our episodes, go to democratsabroad.org and look for us in the drop-down menu. I'm Rachel Oigster with David Schellenberg in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for listening to Democrats Abroad, the Blue Vote Cafe.